David, as you know, and anyone else that had Randall in class, he's an excellent student. He just blew me away, and I said, you have to apply to our master's and PhD program. Because his methodology was top-notch, statistics was top-notch, writing was top-notch, and his presentation skills were also top-notch. As a senior, he was a California graduate student, so I suggested that Randall apply to the program, and he did. And he got in, and since he's been in, he's gotten funding. Right now, he is working at the Center for Urban Studies. So he's just excelling all the way through. But he's a graduate student, and so I want you guys to kind of to be nice. To be nice. This is his first presentation in front of, he's presented at conferences before, but you have faculty in the room, students in the room, kids are in the room. So the way that we're thinking about this, and I think he's done a good job on this, the way we're thinking about this is exploratory. So we really do want your comments and your critique to help Randall think about how to go the next step. Because the idea is, hopefully by the end of the summer, and before then, is to submit it somewhere for publication. So we really do want your comments, and if people are willing, I know people are busy, but if you're willing to read a draft down the road, that would be extremely helpful. So we really do welcome your comments. With that, I'll let Randall give the presentation.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. As Dr. Brown said, this is a working paper, and I would really appreciate you guys' help with trying to make it something worth merit. We've gotten about halfway through it, but I think you guys' comments will be very much appreciated and applied to the paper to make it a great piece, hopefully. The impact of race and economic competition on support for immigration. The 2016 presidential election has highlighted the concern that many Americans have with immigration. Donald Trump grabbed media headlines, announcing plans to build a wall to keep undocumented Mexicans from illegally crossing the border. Cordell West explained that Trump's victory was a pseudo-populist rejection of neoliberal policies by white working and middle-class voters. For West, these voters expressed their rejection of neoliberal policies through the blaming of their social miseries on various minorities, including illegal Mexicans. But the rise of Trump, however, is not the focus of this presentation, sad to say. It's more concerned with West's analysis, and that says, 1, does the blaming of other social groups for one's own group's miseries impact one's disposition towards social policies? And 2, if so, does the particular race of the individual enhance or diminish the impact of this blame? To conduct this study, I borrowed from Bloomer's theory on race group prejudice and Lopez's theory on dog whistle politics. Bloomer's theory posits that individuals see themselves as belonging to groups, which he terms the in-group. All other individuals with different phenotypes are classified as an oppositional group or the out-group. Any increase in the population of the out-group threatens the material well-being of the in-group. This is the thoughts of the in-group. And the in-group holds beliefs on where they feel their group ought to be. They intrinsically believe that they have a certain position. So Bloomer suggests there's 4 feelings that are always present in the dominant group that presuppose prejudice. Those feelings were 1, a feeling of superiority. 2, a feeling that the subordinate race is intrinsically different and alien, like an illegal alien. 3, a feeling of proprietary claim to certain areas of privilege and advantage. And 4, a fear and a suspicion that the subordinate group harbors designs to threaten the interests of the dominant group. Hence the need for a wall. Lopez suggests the specific terms, or dog whistles, are used by politicians to denote race without actually saying it. So the dog whistle politics is a way to act on those feelings of group prejudice. Some of the well-known examples of dog whistle include illegal alien for a Mexican immigrant, or welfare queen for a black woman welfare chief, or Islamic terrorist to denote an Arabic individual. In the post-racial era, these terms incite animus in the dominant group, And it's important that we speak of the post-racial era because politicians have not stopped using race to mobilize voters. However, it's deemed unacceptable to so overtly speak of race. So dog whistles are an important facet of American politics. This is a quote from Donald Trump, where he says, "If elected, I will greatly strengthen our border, making it impenetrable, putting a stop to illegal immigration once for all. I will bring back jobs to the United States. I will make America great again." Here we see American jobs for American workers. No amnesty. Note, you see a black individual, a white individual. Should make us think that maybe immigration is not just a one-race thing. So the threat of a loss of jobs is a dog whistle with racial and economic connotations. Literature on racial attitudes is heavily focused on white attitudes, however. Even Bloomer and Lopez are highly concerned with whites' views. Cornel West's analysis really only focused on whites' views, if you think about it as well. But are other racial groups affected similarly by these dog whistles? This study intends to investigate the views of various racial groups. This act allows for greater inspection of the relative threat felt by other groups as it pertains to immigrant competition for resources. So to do this, I want to ask two research questions. One, to what extent does race and immigration status associate with immigration attitudes? And two, to what extent the perceptions of immigrant threat associate with the immigration attitudes of whites, blacks, and Hispanics? Here we split Hispanics up between those who are born outside the U.S. or the immigrant Hispanics and those born inside the U.S. This study relies on data from the 2004 and 2008 National Politics Survey. It's a nationally represented survey of 4,816 non-institutionalized individuals aged 18 or over from 5 different racial or ethnic groups, which are non-Hispanic whites, blacks or African Americans, Hispanics, Afro-Caribbeans, and Asian Americans. However, this study focuses only upon the views of blacks, whites, and Hispanics. The study had a 33% response rate. And we applied weights to the data to make it reflect social demographic characteristics of the population. My dependent variables I used, we had two. The first one was the question, what do you believe should happen with immigration? Should it increase, stay the same, or decrease? The second dependent variable was, what should the government do in regards to border security spending? Decrease, stay the same, or increase? Our independent variables were of course race, and the second was an economic dog whistle. Do you believe that immigrants take jobs from native-born Americans, yes or no? And we also included an interaction variable of the race of the respondent combined with the belief that immigrants take jobs. So if you look here, these are just basic cross-tabs, unadjusted data. Whites and blacks are just about similar when it comes to increasing border security, followed by Hispanic natives, and lastly by Hispanic immigrants. Same thing with with the belief on decreasing immigration. About a third of blacks and a third of whites both feel that immigration should be decreased, followed again by Hispanic natives and then Hispanic immigrants. When we look at the belief that immigrants don't take jobs, Hispanic immigrants by far are the group that are most likely to believe that immigrants don't take jobs from native-born Americans, while blacks, different from what we see in media and also what we see in literature, are least likely to disagree with that statement, that immigrants don't take jobs from native-born Americans. Now here, we ran a multivariate analysis, order logistic regression, and we controlled for several variables, several social demographic variables, such as education, gender, region, whether your parents were born in the U.S. or not, and income. And these are our interaction variables right here. So the blue are the individuals of that particular race group who believe that immigrants take jobs, and the orange are the individuals within that race group that don't believe it. And we see a pretty clear pattern here, where the whites who believe that immigrants take jobs, mostly for increasing border spending, and also same thing with blacks. However, even though Hispanics are behind both blacks and whites, the gap is considerably larger for Hispanic natives, which says something different that we don't really see in the literature. And we see virtually no relationship for Hispanic immigrants. That's on increasing border security. Now, for decreasing immigration, we see the same pattern. Whites more likely to be against or be for decreasing immigration if they believe the dog whistle that immigrants take jobs from native-born Americans. Same thing with blacks. Same thing for Hispanic natives. Virtually no difference between Hispanic immigrants. So, what are our main findings? Hispanic immigrants were the least likely to be threatened by immigrants and the most supportive of least nativist immigration policies. The relationship between perceived job threat from immigrants and support for nativist immigration policies is weaker among Hispanic immigrants than among others. There's no relationship between perceived job threat from immigrants and immigration policy attitudes among Hispanic immigrants. But there's a strong relationship among whites, blacks, and native-born Hispanics. Whites and blacks are statistically significantly more opposed to immigration than Hispanics. This opposition increases when the threat of economic competition is factored into the equation. It is possible that blacks, although not the dominant group, likewise feel entitled to a certain privileged position vis-a-vis other race groups. This position is perceived to be materially threatened by other race groups, for example, Hispanics. Even though the literature suggests that whites are not comparably threatened, they nevertheless oppose immigration at greater levels when they accept the dog whistle that immigrants threaten their material interests. This study helps us to better understand perceptions of threat and how this perception may be mobilized through policy preferences. It also demonstrates that social science research may be best served to study the positions of race groups other than whites more to uncover how certain patterns have been transferred to other groups. Thank you.
Excuse me, Randall?
Yes.
So, we start at the front?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that, when you brought up Cornell West, Dr. Cornell West, have you also thought about looking at the historical patterns in America since almost its inception with various other white-dominated groups who were considered the other? And the fact that we are seeing now for the first time ever, farmers are offering benefits to get people to come work on their farms to do the work immigrants did for dirt cheap money with no benefit packages whatsoever because of the pressure on immigration and illegal border crossing. Were you aware of those two issues?
Yes, briefly. I've looked at a lot of different racial groups and how different ethnic antagonism goes around. I'm reading a little bit of Edward Said's work right now, Orientalism and whatnot. What particularly interested me about Hispanics for this study, though, was the fact that if you look at all the data from the Pew Research Center, Gallup polls and whatnot, undocumented Hispanics, they're stable in the country. It hasn't been increasing.
Right.
But there's still this belief in media that we're just being overrun by undocumented Hispanic immigrants, right? So I think the frame, when you think about does immigrants take jobs from native-born Americans, it almost sends a signal that you're thinking that native-born workers, manufacturing, service labor, or whatever, they key into Hispanics, not to any other group, even though other groups are kind of inching closer. Africa, for instance, African immigrants are increasing at higher levels than any other immigrants. So I think, for me, looking at Hispanics was important to fit the frame. To fit the frame that I was trying to look at for the study of taking jobs.
But it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same. But when we go back in history, in the 80s, it was the Japanese.
Yes.
We had this whole thing about Japanese.
Japanese, Chinese.
We go back into the 50s, we go back into back to when the Irish, they had signs.
Mm-hmm.
Irish need not apply,
Mm-hmm.
And it's been this concept, this basic concept in America's DNA that's the true problem from my perspective, that until we were able to root that out, we're gonna have this, it's gonna be another group 5, 10 years from now, we're gonna find another group.
Absolutely.
We're
I
gonna
agree
find
with
another
that.
group, yep.
I agree with that. Yes. Yes,
So
sir.
any effort to differentiate based on economics, income level?
Yes. Well, no. I just use it as a control variable, but one of the things that we did, because most of the literature shows that the groups that are most affected by illegal or legal immigration are on the lower rungs of society, being those who don't have college degrees and those who are like below at the median income level or below it. So one of the control variables I used here was a combination or a contextual variable combining individuals who didn't have a college degree and also had a median income or less, and the findings still held up.
So if you controlled for income, in other words, limited your findings to people who did not have, say, a college degree,
Yes.
or were median income or below, you'd still find that whites and blacks would line up pretty much the same way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, I think I have it here. My actual tables. Yeah, controlling for both income and education, whites and blacks still were almost doubly, or the odds of whites and blacks to be against immigration were almost twice that of Hispanics. And if we look at immigrant Hispanics, it was even greater than that.
But was there any differentiation by income? You know, just intuitively, I would think that lower income people would consider themselves to be more threatened by immigrants, particularly with respect to employment, than higher income people.
I did run an interaction with that variable at the same time, and I have it here.
But you know, you're probably right.
It was right for whites. For blacks, it actually didn't work. And I have it here if you want to see it afterwards or whatever. I have my tables, but for blacks, that interaction between lower status individuals on the lower rungs of society did not work. However, for whites, it did work. So basically saying whites who were on the lower rungs of society, whites who didn't have college educations, whites who didn't have a certain amount, didn't have a lower income, they were more against immigration than any other whites. But for blacks, didn't work. The only thing that worked for blacks, interaction that worked for blacks, was that frame that immigrants take jobs from native born Americans.
See, 'cause I was thinking less that it would be a moderator, like the economics wouldn't change the effect of the competition variable, but what I was curious about is who is most likely to feel that competition, right? It seemed like a model for the moderator,
Yes.
right, would add, because then we would know,
That's good.
you know, when you put those bar graphs up, well, who's more likely to be in the blue versus the, was it orange? Group, you see what I mean, Randall?
Yes, I do.
You know, so if it's like, you know, the black respondents or low income are far more likely to say yes, they think immigrants take jobs, and I think that might contextualize that interaction more.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you.
Or region,
That's probably
right, like Southwest or.
Right. It's too bad they don't have, I think, another 2004 version of the survey has zip code, which would be good, because then you can see like how close they are to, I mean, how close you are to Hispanics.
Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the only survey that has it. The 2008 does not include those like zip code variables.
Yeah.
They probably could get it.
But it's interesting, because I mean, the old immigrant destinations, right, tend to be areas where there's not a large black population.
Right.
But then the new immigrant destination, like in the southeast,
Right.
you know, is a little different.
Yes, sir.
You began your thing with the students from Johnson, then went to Cornell West, and I was thinking of something that I had seen on the news in relationship to that, and how this sort of plays into context. And I guess the Department of Justice has set up a immigrant crime task force. The idea that somehow Native Americans were being criminalized by immigrants, and got me to thinking from your statistics that some people must think of immigrants as a criminal element as well. So my question, and all this is about attitudes, immigrants coming in, so I think something that would be worth this. Why do people have this image? And apparently there is, you know, a political support for it. So the question I have in my mind is, well, why?
I didn't touch on that a lot in there when I think I should have about Lopez's argument, dog whistle politics. And I think the key thing about that framework is that there's always a scapegoat, because we have the country does have serious issues, right? However, it's easier to place blame on another group or another individual than it is to look at structural factors that lead to, let's say, economic immiseration, trade deals that put out low skilled, low educated manufacturing workers, discrimination in labor markets where not CEOs, but people in charge discriminate against certain groups for other groups, which they have some cases right now going on in Los Angeles, so to speak. They definitely play a role, I think. But I think that's the whole point of the dog whistles, though, that the scapegoat keeps everybody from paying attention to those larger issues that take more political will and political capital to combat. I don't know if I answered your question.
Just a suggested idea, exploring an idea, that's all.
Yes.
I'm curious if you've looked much at the racial resentment literature. Me personally, I'm in mainstream political science, where as you mentioned earlier, we look mostly at white attitudes, trying to figure out what's spreading white racial resentment. But with regards, I'm doing similar work right now myself, looking at NES and GSS data, and I'm not sure if you've read anything from Michael Tesler, but his recent racial resentment stuff is kind of basically blew up my dissertation in the early stages.
Okay.
Because I too was interested in the role of economic anxiety on racial resentment. But basically we found, at least with whites, that racial resentment drives economic anxiety rather than the sort of leftist Marxist assumption that economic anxiety actually drives racial resentment.
Yeah.
So I mean, most of our stuff in political science looks mostly at whites and black opinion, not so much with Hispanic and Asian Americans. But I'm curious if you looked at any of that, because it seems that, at least for whites again, Tesla called this the racialization spillover, that essentially Barack Obama made everything racialized. So there's been a sort of, not per se a realignment of white opinion, but whites who were racially, overall levels of racial resentment amongst whites stayed continuous. It's just the target of their racial resentment varies, kind of the scapegoats we're talking about. But prior to Obama, racial resentful whites did not express high levels of economic anxiety. Post-Obama, racial resentful whites almost unanimously express economic anxiety. And nothing's changed other than Obama in the middle. So I'm just curious if you've looked at it. That might kind of, like as Dr. Brown was saying, you're kind of maybe looking for the next stage. Some of that literature might help you sort of figure out some of these variables and things in the middle to try to, I think, get to the question of maybe why or who these people are. But yeah, good luck, because my dissertation was completely blown up, and I'm kind of working on the same stuff. So.
I haven't looked at Michael Tesler, but I'm looking at right now. I'm looking at a lot of different whiteness studies or whiteness scholars. I think right now I'm reading George Lipsitz and Roediger. Lipsitz will kind of like say the opposite of what you said. Like racial resentment leads to economic anxiety.
Yeah.
And he like operates from the frame of whiteness as a property and a group, and that leads to racial resentment, basically, because whites don't really have to think about their position, but they're all invested in it because they see definite gains from it. So they will be likely to be against any group that they see posing a challenge. And I think that's where we go back to Boomer and this feeling of where the dominant group feeling where they should be in society. So if you are on top, or you have everything going your way, then yeah, it's pretty logical for you to think of anybody else posing a threat to that, and you don't want that to change. Yes.
So these conversations with Reynolds and I have had a lot, so I'm gonna just ask them in public now. In this survey, the statement, respondents were asked the question, do you think immigrants take jobs from native-born Americans? So that's not true though.
Right.
I mean, when you look at, for example, when you look at the loss of these manufacturing jobs, a large number of them, I think are somewhere between 85 and 90% of them, the reason why these low-skilled jobs are not here anymore, it's not even because they offshored, but because of automation.
Yeah. Technology.
So, and like you said, when you look at the numbers of undocumented immigrants that come to the nation, particularly Mexican undocumented immigrants, it's actually been going down for the past 8 years.
Yeah.
So then why does it work? I mean, so like the reality says that immigrants aren't really taking jobs. And it's automation, there's other structural factors, and even the idea that there's a horde of immigrants coming to the country, that's not true either.
So you're saying why does the frame?
Why
do
does
I
the
think
frame work if it's not even true?
Other than it just being an easy frame, I think I go back to Derek Bell's last chapter in Faces at the Bottom of the Well called the Space Traders. So, long story short, some aliens come to the United States, offer the government enough chemicals to fix the environment, and enough gold to set them straight for a century and get them out of the national debt. All they want is all black people, right? So the white populace is loving this. They don't even really care about the gold and the chemicals to fix the environment. They just want to get rid of black people. However, the billionaire class come to the government and they're like, no, we can't do this deal. We need someone to buffer the things that we're doing. If you take all black people, then all they'll do is see that we're immiserating them.
We lose a scapegoat.
Yeah, we'll lose a scapegoat. So that buffer is important. I think it's class conflict. It's a battle between blacks and honorary whites. That's why it works.
But you hit on a good point, Dr. Brown, with the automation factor. And what media will not do is media will not highlight that as much as they need to, and which is what it started happening in the 80s. I mean, here, just as Detroit along as a case study, Detroit's high school system was training high schoolers how to go to the factory. That's what the education system was in Detroit, until the factory started automating. And then it became a problem because there was no pipeline anymore for low-skilled, individuals, and they couldn't go into college because the high school hadn't prepared them. So when they sit back and talk about education and they talk about this and talk about that, all of this has been systemically orchestrated a certain kind of way for just what you said, for a buffering, for the purposes of buffering. And you do have to look at the media framing aspect of it. And it just boggles me sometimes when I'm looking at media, folks, television media, print media. When you look at a story, you can look at the framing and you can almost direct how people are going to respond.
Right. I also think, I didn't mention it, it's a certain claim. So the reason why native-born Hispanics are also going for that frame and also being motivated to be against immigration. I mean, you would think that the Hispanics will be like a monolith. I think you and I were talking last night. During the time of slavery, I couldn't really see free black people being against anything that would hurt slaves, because you would think they're like a monolith. However, that claim or that legal status that also separates people within families plays a role in individuals thinking that they deserve something. So if you think about we talked about whites occupying a certain position in society, and it always being that way, and them feeling threatened from outside groups. But think about African Americans, who you can argue that they probably don't have much, but what they do have has been gained through struggle, civil rights movement, black power movement, black arts movement. And it's kind of difficult to see another group come in and kind of, want to say jump the line. So that's another claim that they have. So it's very easy to know these things and know that people already are pressured into a certain position, then to come with a frame saying that, hey, we know you're losing jobs, and the reason you're losing jobs, the reason you're losing income is because another group is jumping the line, another group is coming, and then there's some truth to some things. There is research that shows that immigration lowers black wages, increases black unemployment, and increases black prison rates. But I think back to your point, immigrants can't take a job because the immigrant doesn't own a job. An immigrant has to be given a job. So it's easier to look at the person who just occupied it than the person who was hitting, who did the hiring.
What about the thing about so many jobs leaving the country being a factor in this? I mean, not only robotizing and the electronic workforce, the robotizing, the downsizing, the right-sizing. I mean, this is creating a lot of anxiety among, I think, everyone. So I think all those things are coming into play. And that creates a lot of anxiety, so.
I think that's why the firm works.
Yeah.
Exactly what you said.
Yeah.
There's a high level of tension, wages are being stagnated for certain groups of people. And so then, as Randall said, so like the official, someone running for office says that, well, it's them.
Yeah.
It's them, it's not global capitalism, it's them. People say, okay, fine, I'll go with you on that. So I think, but I think with what Robin said earlier, I think you probably find the same relationship throughout time. You went back 100 years ago, during times of economic turmoil, and you probably see the same relationship between perceptions of Irish immigrants, or perception of Jewish immigrants, or perceptions of any other immigrant group that just got here. There's a very low level of political power. You probably would see the same relationship, I think. That's what we're saying today.
Plus the introduction from horses to cars, created a lot of anxiety.
Exactly, right.
I mean, the industrial workforce, all sorts of things were changing at the same time.
Exactly. So if you're an elected official or running for office, and you're kind of a member of this kind of elite class, or you're associated with them, you can say, well, we're going to enact policies that's going to weaken our economic position. We're going to enact policies that we're going to spend more tax dollars on job training programs, we're going to take money out of our pocket. We're going to spend more money on social safety net programs. We're going to have trade policies that are beneficial to workers and to owners. You could do that, or you just say it's the Mexicans, or it's the Irish, or it's whomever, and it seems to work. And last thing, I gotta say last thing. The way these surveys work too, I've been thinking about this for a while, because I'm using the national politics study. I use the national politics study. The surveys themselves also are leading. And they are, well, we use the question of, do you think illegal immigrants are taking jobs? So that question itself is leading. You're saying illegal. It's criminal in the question. So it is kind of like getting people to think a certain way automatically, so, and you don't see a lot of surveys that say undocumented immigrants. You don't see a lot of surveys that ask, do you think that corporations play a role in job leaving from the U.S. or the country to automate? They don't even ask those questions. We just ask about illegal immigrants, and that's what we say. So we play a role in it too. After we need some of these findings, I think if the wording was changed, undocumented immigrants or economic refugees or what have you, perhaps the relationship would look a little bit different. But we use the same terminology that's expressed on television, and people are familiar with it, and I think that's one of the reasons why it works.
All right.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.